What's going on, it's Suk and I'm back with a brand new video on SuperDuprTech, and in today's video I'll be playing a number of different games on the Spec M3 Pro 14-inch MacBook Pro. So I've already uploaded a number of videos playing games on the entry models. As I mentioned, this is the Spec model. The full spec for this model can be found down below in the video's description. Also, we are on the road to 5,000 subscribers, so if you are new around here, smack that subscribe button, clicking the bell to be notified when a new video goes live. But without any further ado, let's hit the titles. So as I mentioned, this is the Spec M3 Pro 14-inch MacBook Pro, which means it comes with a 12-core CPU, an 18-core GPU, 36GB of unified memory, along with 4TB of SSD-based storage. So you're probably wondering, what games did I play on this MacBook Pro? Well, there's quite a list, so buckle yourselves in. So I started off by playing Battlefield 1, which was followed up by Battlefield 5, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Minecraft, League of Legends, Grand Theft Auto 5, CSGO, Firewatch, Fortnite, Hitman 2, CSGO 2, Cyberpunk, Thief Simulator 2, Watch Dogs Legion, Halo, Overwatch 2, Resident Evil Village, Resident Evil 4, Watch Dogs 2, Hogwarts Legacy, Spider-Man Remastered, Spider-Man Miles Morales, Far Cry 6, Saints Row, Borderlands 2, Call of Duty Black Ops 3, The Witcher 3, X-Plane 11, along with both Portal 1 and Portal 2. So before I show you what it was like playing games on this MacBook Pro, I do want to remind you that I am currently testing the M3 MacBook Air, so be sure to subscribe clicking the bell icon to be notified of when videos on that MacBook Air go live. So as I have done previously, I started off by playing games on this MacBook Pro at its native resolution, that's 3024 by 1964, keeping the graphics settings to high. We can see the top two performing games were League of Legends and Minecraft, which was shortly followed up by Fortnite, with them averaging 116, 115 and 95 frames per second respectively. Hitman 2 and both Spider-Man titles would not run at this resolution, and I can count on both hands how many games were able to average above 60 frames per second. And we see games like CSGO, Thief Simulator 2, Halo, Resident Evil Village, Resident Evil 4, Call of Duty Black Ops 3, X-Plane 11 and Portal 1 and 2 either get close to or average higher than 60 frames per second, and to be straight with you, these games were quite enjoyable at this resolution. Of course, the displays on these MacBook Pro models support Apple's ProMotion 120Hz technology, and whilst Minecraft and League of Legends were close to averaging 120 frames per second, the reality of it is they didn't, and so I lowered the resolution, this time down to 2560 by 1600. Once the resolution was lowered, we can see that Minecraft and League of Legends averaged above 120 frames per second, with them averaging 113 and 140 frames per second respectively. Hitman 2 and both of those Spider-Man games were still unable to play at this resolution. And playing games through parallels like Battlefield 1, Battlefield 5 and also GTA 5 wasn't awfully too bad, all things considered. Sure, you're not taking advantage of the ProMotion display in this MacBook Pro, but it was only a few years ago that most games consoles would only output up to 30 frames per second. And you might be thinking to yourself, wow, Battlefield 5 and Battlefield 1 were games which came out many years ago. But you've got to remember that these games are being played through a virtual machine on hardware which is not designed for gaming. And I can certainly imagine that if these Battlefield titles were made natively available on macOS, that they would perform considerably better. I'm not surprised with Firewatch averaging 39 frames per second when playing at this resolution, as it's a game which hasn't been updated in many years. Whilst it's a native macOS game, it hasn't been updated to take advantage of any of the Apple Silicon properties. And then we've got those two Resident Evil games, Resident Evil Village and Resident Evil 4, and both of these games average close to or above 90 frames per second, with Resident Evil Village averaging close to 100 frames per second. And I'll be honest with you, the experience playing this game on this hardware so far has been great. Watch Dogs 2 averaged 37 frames per second at this resolution. Hogwarts Legacy also averaged 42 frames per second. And once again, considering that these games are not designed to be run on this particular piece of hardware, I think it's quite impressive. CSGO 2 averaged close to 60 frames per second, with it averaging 58 frames per second. Once again, the experience playing this game was quite good. And as you can see, Far Cry 6 still has that lighting issue. Now I'd imagine that if that lighting issue was to be fixed in the future, that this game would be pretty much perfect. I mean, sure, you're only averaging 42 frames per second at this resolution, but once again, I think it's still quite passable. Perhaps the most shocking game here was Borderlands 2, with it only averaging 54 frames per second, considering that it was quite an older title and it's been translated from 32-bit obviously to 64-bit through crossover. Whereas we see other 32-bit titles like Portal 1 and 2 averaging over 60 frames per second, with Portal 1 averaging 74 frames per second. Hey, something's telling me you have not subscribed yet. We are on the road to 5,000 subscribers, so be sure to subscribe, as I have got a lot of videos planned. Honestly, hit that subscribe button and I'm sure you'll be surprised. So hey, I lowered the resolution once again down to 1920 by 1200. So when it comes to playing games at this resolution, I still kept the graphics settings to high, and surprise surprise, Hitman 2 and both of those Spider-Man games were able to play at this resolution. Although the interesting thing is these three titles were the only three titles that would average less than 40 frames per second, whereas all the other games average close to 50 or above. Whilst playing at this resolution, we see that Minecraft and League of Legends are now averaging above 120 frames per second, with them averaging 153 and 149 frames per second respectively. Fortnite also came in quite close, with it averaging 116 frames per second. And we've also got games like Resident Evil Village and Call of Duty Black Ops 3, which average triple digits. And considering that most gaming monitors are either 1440p or 1080p, I think considering the frame rates that we're getting from a thin and light laptop with the thermal and battery life performance that this MacBook has, I think it's not exactly something to laugh about. Sure, you can get a gaming laptop for a third the price and probably get higher frame rates with that laptop. But ultimately, are you going to get a gaming laptop that's, number one, built as well as a Mac? Number two, got as good as a screen? And when I say that, I mean from the brightness levels, from a resolution standpoint, or even from a color accuracy standpoint. The chances are you're probably not. And that's before we start thinking about the battery life and the thermal performance that you get from these MacBooks. Not to mention, to get the most out of a gaming laptop, you have to have it plugged in. And at that point, well, you might as well buy a desktop. And once again, to be straight with you, games like Cyberpunk, Watch Dogs, Overwatch, they've performed quite decently, especially on this hardware. Even Hogwarts Legacy averaged close to 70 frames per second at this full HD resolution, of course at this aspect ratio. So yeah, I don't think it's too bad. But once again, this MacBook Pro has a 120Hz display, so what I did was naturally lower the resolution. This time I lowered to the standard HD resolution at this aspect ratio to 1280 by 800. And when playing games at this resolution, we see that Hitman 2, shockingly enough, averaged close to 80 frames per second, which was not something I had exactly planned for. Whereas both Spider-Man titles averaged above 40 frames per second. So I do want to quickly mention that there are other ways that you'll be able to improve upon the frame rates that you're seeing for the vast majority of these games which are being played through crossover. And I'll leave further information on this link down below in this video's description. But as you can see, when playing games at this resolution, we have around 9 games which were averaging triple digits. So honestly, if you only had your MacBook with you and you wanted to play a handful of games, whether it was because you was traveling and you had some downtime, then honestly you could get away quite comfortably with playing some games on this MacBook, of course with this spec. I had thought that having more unified memory would have meant that the games would have been able to play much better on this machine, or at least when it comes to games like Hitman, that with the additional video memory that they would have been able to play at those higher resolutions, but that simply was not the case. And to be honest with you, the improvements over the entry models hasn't been exactly the most. Sure, if you are playing games through Parallels, then yeah, you will be able to increase the amount of memory that you give to Parallels as a virtual machine, but at the end of the day, the only thing that those additional 4 terabytes of storage is going to give you is peace of mind at the fact that you're able to download so many titles and have so many other things on your Mac at the same time. And for the difference in money, I would say get the full-fledged M3 MacBook Pro, the one with the 12-core CPU, the 18-core GPU, along with the 18GB of unified memory, and then use that additional money to probably get yourself a cheaper gaming laptop. And it's only so you don't need to go through all of the hurdles of going through crossover and any issues that may present you. But once again, if you've only got one machine with you, or you could only pick between one machine, then the MacBook Pro will provide a fairly casual gaming experience. If by casual that means you've got to run through a couple of hurdles, so be it. So guys, I have got the most expensive MacBook Pro models in, of course with the M3 Max and the 128GB of unified memory. So if you do want to see what it's like to play a handful of games on those machines, then be sure to smack that subscribe button, clicking the bell to be notified when those videos go live. I am going to be expanding into some other videos over the coming weeks, whether it be tablets, whether it be smartphones, some drones, but at the end of the day, I am still going to be focusing on these gaming videos, so expect to see some of those videos coming out at least once a week. If you've got any questions or if there's anything that you'd like to see further tested on these machines, then let me know by dropping a comment down below in the comment section, or alternatively you can hit me up on my social media, links to which can be found down below in this video's description. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care and have a good one.